One of the most common questions we see veterans ask is how long does VA take to review evidence? Today, we're going to take a brief walk through the claims process and then talk about the most time consuming phase of that process, which VA calls evidence gathering, review, and decision. I'm Nicholas Briggs, an accredited VA claims agent.
And I'm Jacob Nadro, accredited VA claims agent. If you find this video helpful, please make sure to give it a like. Let's get started. So Nick, big picture, what are the stages of the VA claims timeline?
Sure. So when we talk about the claims process, we're really looking at 5 different stages. Some take longer than others. The first one we see is that the claim has been received. That's when the veteran submits their form or other application. VA has received the claim, but they haven't assigned it to a reviewer yet. It's basically just been intaken and processed. From there, we have the initial review stage where they assign the claim to a reviewer, and the reviewer goes through, reviews the form, determines what additional information might be needed from the veteran, or potentially from other sources, depending on the type of claim or the type of evidence that they might need to support that claim. And then getting into that third, more elongated part of the process is the evidence gathering, review, and decision phase. And that's where they take what they gathered during that initial review and they send letters to you, to the veteran, to get that additional information. But they might also send additional letters to your healthcare providers to get private treatment records. They might also send letters to government agencies such as the Social Security Administration if you're applying for something like TDIU, in which case your SSA claim file might be relevant information to the unemployability question. Those are just some of the examples, but basically VA is going to send letters to any sources of information that they might need to obtain evidence that they can use to review and ultimately make their decision down the road. Finally, we have the preparation for notification. That's where they start drafting the decision letter. They start getting the letter ready to be sent to the veteran. And then finally, once that letter is prepared for mail, the mail is sent out to the veterans, the process is considered complete at that point. Once you've received that initial decision letter, the onus is on the veteran to then take any additional steps they might need, such as appeal or, file a supplemental claim.
Sure. Thanks for laying the groundwork there, Nick. So from there, let's get into some common questions that we typically get from veterans. First being, in general, what's the timing like on this whole claims process?
So I'm going to give you a very quick answer, and then I'm going to give you 2 quick caveats, and those are big caveats. So as of right now, the published number for the average number of days required for VA to complete all stages of the claims process is 155 days. Now, the 2 caveats are that this timeframe varies significantly depending on the complexity of the claim. Some might only take 2 or 3 months, some might take an entire year. It's all going to depend on the number of issues being claimed, how complex those issues are, and any number of different factors. The other big caveat is that we're only talking about the initial claims process, when you submit that first form to get that claim processed. When we start looking into things like supplemental claim appeals or filing a direct docket notice of disagreement with the board, we're talking about adding potentially years to the process. So that 155 days number really only applies to that initial processing of the claim at the VA regional office.
All right, thanks, Nick. The next question would be, what factors might affect the timing most?
So I kind of alluded to that already, but it definitely depends heavily on the type of the claim the veteran submitted. Service connection claims tend to be a lot more involved than increased rating claims, just because there's more evidence VA is going to need to gather if they don't have it already, up to and including getting all of your service records, getting years of medical records. Whereas if you're already service connected for a disability and they already have a claims file that's been assembled, it's really just going to be a matter of them getting updated treatment records and then reviewing them and proceeding with the decision from there. Another factor that can affect the length of the process is the number of injuries or disabilities the veteran is claiming and how complex they are. In terms of complexity, we see veterans, oftentimes will claim disabilities that might be considered presumptive, for example. If there's lung cancer claims based off of Agent Orange exposure. Because the nexus element of that claim is going to be presumed, as long as you submit evidence of a diagnosis and your exposure with your claim, VA could actually process that pretty quickly, whereas other disabilities might take time because they might require a VA examination for one reason or another.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. So, of all the phases that you talked about earlier, which of those is the longest and what typically happens during that phase?
So the middle stage, the third stage, is definitely the longest, and again, VA likes to call that the evidence gathering, review, and decision phase. Um, During that phase, the VSR is going to do three different things. They're going to ask the veteran for any additional evidence they themselves might be able to provide, including any records they have from their time in service or any lay statements they may be able to provide to describe their conditions. They're also going to try and get medical records from the veterans' healthcare providers, government agencies, like we talked about before. And then once they've sent all those letters, once they've received the evidence back that they think they need, or they've exhausted all potential attempts to do so, they're going to review that evidence and then make their decision. And once VA believes that they've received all necessary evidence to process the case, they'll assign it to an adjudicator. But however, once the VA adjudicator reviews their disability claims file, including the initial application, they might determine more evidence is required, and they'll kick it back to send more letters, to schedule more exams, so on and so forth. But at that point, it's still just going to be a matter of them reviewing the initial claim, reviewing those medical records, making sure that the VA examinations that were obtained were adequate, and seeking clarification again if necessary. But ultimately, once the VA adjudicator's decision recommendation documents are finalized, they're sent to a second tier reviewing authority so that they can make sure that anything that needs to be included in the decision is included. And then once all of that is done, they'll put together that final decision to be mailed to the veteran. So in total, this stage alone can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, but sometimes more than that, depending on, again, the number of issues, how many VA exams they're requesting, so on and so forth.
So, you kind of already answered this next one a bit there and earlier, but what type of things might make that phase take longer?
Yeah, again, it's kind of a matter of VA reviewing all the evidence they've received, and then because they have certain duties they need to fulfill, such as considering reasonably raised issues, they might end up getting a claim for a single disability. But once that examination for that condition comes back, they might have 5 additional residuals that are mentioned in that initial exam that aren't discussed in the level of detail that VA might need to consider and potentially grant, secondary service connection. So that's one example where one initial exam might result in the need to gather additional evidence and to request additional medical opinions, which is only going to, cause the process to take longer.
And is there any ways that we can make that phase shorter?
So there is a potential for veterans to request expedited status. They can have their claims treated as a priority under certain situations, but they do need to meet certain criteria in order to request that priority expedited treatment. So one such example is extreme financial hardship or homelessness. Again, VA, if the veteran's able to demonstrate either extreme financial hardship or that they are homeless, VA is going to treat their claim with a significant priority. If they have advanced age, then a veteran can request that their case be expedited. But there are different rules for different jurisdictions. So the regional office, the agency or original jurisdiction, a veteran has to be 85 years or older in order to request this expedited status. But if they're 75 years or older and they have a case at the board, then they can request to have their case advanced on the docket. And then finally, there's the case of terminal illness, where if for one reason or another, the veteran is suffering from a terminal illness that will result in their death, they can submit medical evidence confirming the terminal illness, and VA will expedite their case once they have that information.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. That's a lot of detail. I think that's where we're going to stop for today. If you like this video, be sure to follow our channel for more. You can always find more information on VA at our website at cck-law.com. Thanks again, Nick. Take care.